Decluttering, downsizing, why even do it now? You're not moving, correct? Well, look, it may not be what you want to hear, but this is the truth. If you're 55 to maybe 62, your kids are probably gone, right? And retirement is approaching for you. So this really is the ideal time to downsize while you can still do it yourself before it feels overwhelming or gets left to a family member, right? Think of decluttering like this. Thoughtful, it's a thoughtful act of love. You're doing it so your loved one doesn't have to deal with a house full of stuff later on. This one shift changes everything. It's freedom, not just for you, but for everyone around you too. And I'll guarantee you this, a life with less stuff gives you more freedom and more peace. It gives you more time and more money for the retirement you actually want. And here's what usually happens. You open a closet and every single item becomes its own decision. Keep it, donate it, toss it. Multiply that by every drawer, every shelf, every box sitting in the basement, and you've got decision fatigue before lunch. Now, add in the guilt, a sweater that belonged to your mom or a tool set your dad gave you years ago. Every decision comes with an emotional gut punch on top of that practical one, donate, keep. And on top of all of that, there's a mismatch nobody talks about. The home you're moving to is likely smaller than the one you're in now. So even the things you do want to keep have to compete for space that simply doesn't exist yet. That's the traditional way to declutter. And it wears people out before they even get near the moving truck. And it's why people will say, I just don't know where to start. So there's a completely different way to do this. It's called the reverse decluttering. Some people call it Swedish death cleaning. Instead of asking what you should get rid of, you ask what you actually want to keep for your next chapter. It's faster. It's a lot gentler on you emotionally as well. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to use it step by step, long before you ever call a moving company. And at the end, I go over the 6 mistakes to avoid. And here's the thing, I work with people going through this exact process regularly. So let me walk you through what actually works. Here's the whole method in one image. Imagine standing in your kitchen and pulling every single drawer out at once. Instead of asking what has to go, you only put back what you genuinely use in your next home. That's it. That's one shift from subtracting to choosing is the entire method. So now let's talk about why this is harder than most people expect. Well, downsizing after 20 or 30 years in the same house is not like packing up your first apartment. You've got decades of decisions stacked on each other. A wedding gift perhaps you never used, a filing cabinet full of paperwork from a job you retired from years ago, photos in a box you haven't opened since your kids were small. Or like me, I have photos in storage boxes in my storeroom that are buried beneath other boxes of stuff. I don't even have all of that figured out, even myself. So the traditional method asks you to sort through every one of those decisions one at a time. That's not really decluttering. That's reliving your whole life while also trying to plan a move. No wonder people get stuck and don't know what to do. And I want to name something here because it's real. There's often a quiet anxiety underneath all of this that has nothing to do with the stuff itself. It's the fear of making a mistake with the biggest asset you own. It's the worry that once you start, you can't take it back. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone in feeling it. And it's exactly why starting with a gentler method matters so much. This idea of reverse decluttering actually comes from a real book. It's written by a Swedish author named Margareta Magnusson. In Swedish, it's called Downsizing, which translates loosely to death cleaning. It sounds a bit blunt, I know, but the idea behind it isn't as morbid at all. It's practical, honest way to lighten your load now so the people you love aren't stuck sorting through everything later. Here's another situation to imagine. You've been in the same house for close to 30 years, let's say, and you're planning to move next year into a 2-bedroom bungalow. Your basement alone has 3 decades of holiday decoration. It also has your kids' old schoolwork and furniture from a house you lived in before this one. And under the traditional method, you'd go through every single box, one at a time, deciding what to do with each and every item. Now that could take months, and most people burn out before they finish the basement, let alone the entire house and garage. Under reverse decluttering, you instead picture that basement completely empty. Then you'd only bring back what you know fits your life in that bungalow. The good china you actually use at Christmas. Perhaps it's the tools you still need for a smaller yard. Or the box of photos because, well, those really matter to you. Everything else gets sorted into offer to family, sell or donate, or just let go. The decision gets a lot simpler once you're choosing for the life ahead of you instead of sorting through the life behind you. And I work with people in Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, and Cambridge who are in this exact situation. Many of them are in their 60s and 70s or older, and they've been in their homes 20, 25, sometimes 30 years, and they own it outright or close to it. And they're trying to figure out what the next chapter actually looks like for themselves. My focus isn't just the sale, it's the planning that happens before the sign goes on the lawn. So let's get into the actual steps, because this is where it gets a lot more manageable than people actually think. Step 1, pick one small area to start, not the whole house, one drawer, one closet, one shelf of books. The goal here isn't to finish everything today. It's to build a little bit of momentum so the next area feels less overwhelming. Step 2, empty that space completely, or if it's a big area like a garage, just imagine doing it. By the way, don't start with the garage or basement. And picture every single item sitting outside that space. This forces you to look at each item on its own instead of getting lost in a pile of stuff. In step 3, only put back what actually fits your next chapter. Here's the question to ask yourself for every item. Will I use this? Or will I love having this in the home I'm moving to next? Not the home you used to live in, not the life you used to have, the one that's coming next. Step 4, sort everything else into just a few simple categories. Keep, offer to family, sell or donate, and let go. 4 categories is enough. You don't need more than that. And more than that usually just creates more decision fatigue, and that's what we want to avoid. Step 5, for the items that feel hard, like the photos, the keepsakes, the things tied to someone you've lost, ask yourself a few honest questions. Would my kids actually want this? Would it just become something they have to deal with later? Does this fit the space I'm actually moving into? And am I keeping this because I use it and love it, or because I feel guilty letting it go? There's no wrong answer to any of these questions, but asking them honestly is what makes the decision feel like yours instead of something you're avoiding. And here's something worth saying out loud. Your memories don't actually live inside the object. They live in you. A box of photographs in the basement that you haven't opened in 10 years isn't where your mother lives on. She lives on in the stories you tell your grandkids, your friends, other family members, in the recipe you still make the way she taught you, or in the photo you can put in a frame where you'll actually see it every day. So letting go of the box doesn't mean letting go of her. And step 6, and this is the one that matters more than people expect. Maybe you already know where you're headed, whether that's a bungalow or a condo or maybe a smaller home. Get the floor plan or measurements before you start deciding what to keep. It's a lot easier to let go of a big dining room table when you know it certainly won't fit in the new dining room you're going to be moving to. Now, a few mistakes I see people make with this, because knowing what not to do matters just as much as knowing the steps themselves. The first mistake is trying to do the whole house in one weekend. It just doesn't work that way. And trying to force it just leads to burnout and half-finished piles everywhere. This is a process that plays out over weeks or months, not just a couple of days. The second mistake is starting with the hardest stuff first. Photos, sentimental keepsakes, the garage or basement, things that belong to someone who's passed away. Start with the easy categories instead. The kitchen gadgets you don't use anymore, and we all have some of those, I'm sure. Linens you forgot you had. Clothes that don't fit anymore but you're hoping to fit into. Build up some of that momentum before you tackle the emotional stuff. I call it your decluttering muscle. And the third mistake is not measuring your new space ahead of time. I've already mentioned this, and it's worth mentioning again. Without that, you end up guessing, and guessing usually means keeping too much out of uncertainty. And I made this mistake myself. I thought our storage area in the townhouse we live in now was bigger than it is, and I had way too much stuff for it. I didn't measure it ahead of time. So this led me to bringing more stuff than we actually had room for, and I had to go through and declutter again. And the fourth mistake is waiting until you're under a deadline pressure, like once your house is already listed, to start any of this. Maybe you're picturing a move at some point, even a couple years out. Well, starting now means you get to make these decisions with a clear head. Instead of a closing date breathing down your neck, under, got to do it now or never. There's also a financial mistake I see a lot, and it's putting things into a storage instead of actually deciding on them. A storage unit in Ontario can run anywhere from $40 a month, depending on the size, for a very small locker, and a larger unit can cost upwards to $400 a month or more, depending on the size and the facility. So that adds up to thousands of dollars over a year or two very quickly, and just to delay a decision you're going to have to make eventually anyway. So if you're not using it and you're not looking at it, it's not doing anything for you. It just sits in that unit costing you money every single month. So if you're actually ready to start selling things, do it gradually rather than all at once. Facebook Marketplace, local consignment shops, even an estate sales service if you've got like a larger volume of higher value items. And for photos and paperwork that matter most, scanning them means you keep the memory without keeping the physical box. You can look at those photos anytime you want without them taking up a closet. And there are services that will actually scan and organize your photos for you. Now, I know that will cost you money, but having it done and kept is likely money well spent. And one more thing worth saying here. If you're considering a move into a 55 plus adult lifestyle community, this process matters even more. And the reason is space. Places are often smaller, and some communities have rules through their community association about what can be stored outside your unit. So know your new space and its limits before you start deciding what stays. That's what makes the transition feel manageable instead of overwhelming. And there's a bigger picture here too. A smaller home usually means lower property taxes and lower utility bills, and a lot less time and money spent on maintenance and repairs. And that's not a small thing to just not consider. It's often part of what actually funds the next chapter: the travel, the time with your grandkids, the things you've been putting off. Less house to take care of can genuinely mean more life to live in it. And here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The traditional way of decluttering treats every item as a loss, something you're giving up. The reverse method treats it as a choice, what you're choosing to bring with you into the next part of your life. And if you do this well, you're not just making your own life easier, you're giving your kids or whoever comes after you an enormous gift. Instead of walking into a house full of decades of decisions they never made, they get something better. They get to walk into a house that already reflects what actually matters to you. That's a gift most families never really think of to give each other, and it's one of the kindest ones there is. So pick one small space this week, one drawer, one shelf, one closet. Try emptying it and only putting back what belongs in your next chapter. You'll probably be surprised by how much lighter that one space feels and how much easier the next one becomes. This isn't about becoming a minimalist. It isn't about erasing 30 years of memories in a weekend. It's about deciding on your own terms what actually comes with you into the next part of your life, instead of letting the stuff decide for you. The lighter your load, the easier every part of this gets. The decision, the move, and whatever is waiting for you on the other side of it. So I'll see you in the next video.